Daniel Mercer and his wife, Emily, were the couple everyone admired. He, a respected police officer sworn to protect his town, and she, a kind nurse loved by all, but behind their perfect smiles brewed a deadly secret that would turn a trusted hero into a cold-blooded killer. In the quiet town of Brookhaven, life moved at a gentle pace, and everyone knew each other's name. Among the familiar faces, Officer Daniel Mercer stood out as one of the most trusted men in the community. He wore his police uniform with pride, greeting shop owners with a polite nod and helping elderly neighbors carry groceries when he wasn't on duty. Parents felt safe letting their children wave to him on their way to school. His wife, Emily, was equally adored. A kind-hearted nurse at the local clinic, she always greeted patients with a warm smile and calming words. Together, they were the couple everyone admired, young, hard-working, and seemingly happy. Their two-story brick house, with its freshly painted shutters and blooming flower beds, was a symbol of their well-kept life. Friends often said they were the perfect match, the kind of couple people looked up to when they dreamed of marriage. But behind the neat yard and polite smiles, tension had begun to grow in ways no one else could see. Daniel's career as a police officer was demanding, and he often used late shifts as an excuse to stay out longer than necessary. Emily started to notice strange habits nights when he came home smelling of cigarettes even though he didn't smoke, or unexplained charges on their joint bank account. At first, she brushed it off as work stress, convincing herself that every marriage went through phases. But the small concerns began to stack up, forming a quiet unease she couldn't ignore. Emily's friends noticed subtle changes too. Once cheerful and quick to laugh, she had become more reserved, sometimes staring off during conversations as if her mind was elsewhere. When asked if everything was okay, she gave vague answers about Daniel being tired or busy. Her co-workers at the clinic noticed how she stayed late more often, avoiding the empty house until she was sure Daniel would already be asleep. These shifts in her behavior went largely unnoticed by outsiders, but for those who knew her best, something was undeniably wrong. Daniel, meanwhile, carried his own hidden struggles. Beneath his polished reputation lay a web of financial trouble. Quietly, he had developed a gambling habit, losing large sums of money at underground poker games and online betting sites. What started as a harmless thrill had spiraled into a dangerous addiction, leaving him drowning in debt. He worked extra shifts to cover his losses, but never managed to stay ahead. Instead of confessing to Emily, he became secretive and defensive, fearing that the truth would destroy his carefully built image as a dependable husband and respected officer. To the outside world, their lives remained picture-perfect. The Mercers hosted barbecues in their backyard, waved to neighbors during morning jogs, and attended Sunday services as if nothing was wrong. But inside the walls of their home, trust was fading. Emily's quiet suspicion and Daniel's hidden desperation created a growing distance between them, a silent tension that no amount of polite smiles could hide forever. What looked like a model marriage was slowly turning into a dangerous facade, setting the stage for a tragedy that no one in Brookhaven could have imagined. Daniel's double life grew heavier with each passing day, and the weight of his secrets began to press against every moment of his routine. At work, he maintained the calm authority of a dedicated officer, offering reassuring smiles to frightened victims and steady words to anxious colleagues. But when the uniform came off, he was consumed by panic. His gambling debts were no longer small or manageable. Collectors had started calling, and quiet warnings from dangerous lenders made it clear that time was running out. Emily's questions about their dwindling savings and odd withdrawals only sharpened his fear. The life insurance policy she carried, something they had once purchased as a responsible precaution, now began to look like a lifeline he couldn't ignore. What once symbolized love and protection became, in his mind, a possible escape from the chaos he had created. Instead of facing his mistakes, Daniel let desperation twist his thoughts. Late at night, while Emily slept, he sat in the dim glow of his laptop reading old police reports from unsolved burglaries and homicides. He studied how criminals disguised their actions, how they staged homes to look like random attacks. His years on the force gave him insight into investigative procedures, details about forensic timelines, crime scene contamination, and the small mistakes that led to arrests. The knowledge that once helped him catch criminals now fed a darker purpose. Every click, every note he scribbled in a private notebook was a step toward a deadly plan that only he understood. He knew that a simple disappearance would raise too many questions. A staged break-in, however, could create confusion. A few signs of forced entry, some scattered drawers, maybe a stolen piece of jewelry, these would suggest a robbery gone wrong. The idea of such a cover gave him a sense of control, a chilling reassurance that he could outsmart his own colleagues. He began to collect small items to support his plan. At different stores across neighboring towns, he purchased gloves, cleaning supplies, and a specialized tool for breaking glass. Each item was bought in cash and hidden in the trunk of his patrol car, a place no one would think to search. He told himself these were just precautions, yet every hidden bag and receipt brought the plan closer to reality. Despite his careful preparation, a part of him remained uneasy. Emily's quiet presence in the house made the coming act feel both impossible and inevitable. She still tried to talk to him, sometimes asking if they could take a weekend away or spend more evenings together. Her attempts at closeness only deepened his resolve. The more she reached out, the more he feared discovery, and the more convinced he became that she stood between him and survival. He masked his turmoil with forced smiles and routine gestures, making sure neighbors and co-workers saw nothing but the dependable officer they trusted. Weeks passed as Daniel's plan hardened into something irreversible. He rehearsed the sequence in his mind during patrols, imagining every movement, every word he would say when pretending to be a grieving husband. The thought of killing the woman he once loved should have filled him with horror, but desperation dulled his conscience. What began as a reckless fantasy had become a carefully plotted decision. All that remained was choosing the night when opportunity and darkness would meet, and when his secret life would finally claim the future he believed he deserved. The night Daniel chose arrived cloaked in a heavy rain that seemed to muffle the world outside. Dark clouds hung low over Brookhaven, and the streets glistened under the streetlights, slick and empty. To neighbors, it was just another dreary Friday, but for Daniel it was the culmination of weeks of preparation and restless nights. He had spent the day acting as though nothing was unusual, going through his patrol shift with a steady voice and friendly manner. Every gesture was calculated to appear ordinary, every interaction a shield against suspicion. By the time he returned home, his mind was sharpened to a single purpose. Inside the Mercer house, the atmosphere was deceptively calm. Emily had spent the evening reading in the living room, the sound of rain tapping against the windows creating a soft, rhythmic backdrop. Daniel watched her from the doorway for a long moment, his heart beating faster than he let show. He had already placed the gloves and tools he needed in a hidden corner of the garage out of sight. The plan ran through his head in a relentless loop where he would start, what he would touch, how he would explain every detail later. He moved carefully, making sure to leave no sign of the storm that raged inside him. He began by staging the break-in. Quietly slipping to the back of the house, he put on the gloves and used a small tool to break the corner of a window. The glass cracked with a sharp pop that was quickly drowned by the steady rain. He carefully knocked out fragments, making it appear as though someone had forced their way in. Inside, he tipped over a lamp and pulled open several drawers, scattering papers and jewelry across the floor. Each movement was deliberate, designed to suggest panic rather than precision. He avoided areas that might contain fingerprints, mindful of every surface he touched. Years of police work guided his every decision, turning his own training into a blueprint for deception. When he returned to the bedroom, Emily was already preparing for sleep. She called out to ask about the noise, but Daniel pretended not to hear. In the dim light, the familiarity of the room struck him, the photographs on the wall, the scent of her lotion, the life they had once shared. For a fleeting second, hesitation tightened his chest, but the fear of exposure, the mountain of debts, and the cold logic of his plan pushed him forward. The attack was sudden and brutal, leaving no chance for her to cry out for help. The house, once filled with warmth and quiet comfort, became a silent crime scene. Minutes later, Daniel forced his breathing into ragged sobs before dialing 911. He reported that he had returned from running an errand to find the home ransacked and his wife unresponsive. His voice carried a convincing tremor, the sound of a husband discovering unthinkable tragedy. When officers arrived, they found him crouched beside Emily's body, his uniform damp from the rain, his face streaked with tears. To his colleagues, it looked like a senseless burglary gone wrong. To Daniel, it was the performance he had spent weeks perfecting, the critical first act of a plan he believed would set him free. In the hours after the discovery, the Mercer home became a hive of flashing lights and quiet urgency. Fellow officers moved carefully through each room, their boots tracking rainwater across the hardwood floors as they documented the scene. Neighbors stood in clusters along the street, whispering in shock while crime scene tape fluttered in the damp wind. Daniel sat slumped on the front steps under a borrowed blanket, his face pale and his eyes glassy. He played the part of the devastated husband so convincingly that even seasoned detectives initially treated him with gentle respect. He recounted his story again and again, claiming he had gone out to pick up late-night groceries only to return and find the house in chaos. Every word sounded rehearsed yet broken, a mixture of panic and grief that was difficult to question. Despite the outward appearance of a burglary, small inconsistencies quickly caught the attention of investigators. The window Daniel claimed the intruder used to enter showed no signs of a proper forced entry. The pattern of broken glass indicated it had been shattered from inside the house rather than from outside. Drawers were overturned, but valuable electronics and cash were left untouched. A laptop sat in plain view on the living room table, and a jewelry box on the dresser remained half full. For a crime that was supposed to be a robbery gone wrong, the intruder seemed strangely uninterested in stealing anything of value. As forensic teams processed the scene, they uncovered more troubling details. Fingerprint analysis revealed only the prints of the couple themselves, no unknown impressions that would support the theory of an outsider. Blood spatter patterns in the bedroom suggested a controlled attack rather than a sudden confrontation. There were no muddy footprints despite the evening's heavy rain, an absence that seemed impossible if someone had entered from outside. Each new observation deepened the sense that the crime was not what it first appeared to be. Detectives widened their investigation beyond the house. Surveillance footage from nearby convenience stores showed that Daniel's timeline did not match his account. Cameras captured him leaving the neighborhood much later than he claimed, and no footage confirmed that he had actually entered the grocery store he said he visited. Financial records uncovered another layer of deception. Emily's life insurance policy, worth a significant sum, had been quietly increased only months earlier. At the same time, Daniel's gambling debts had ballooned to dangerous levels. Credit card statements showed cash withdrawals and late-night charges at betting websites, evidence of a desperate man running out of options. Interviews with Emily's friends and co-workers added emotional weight to the growing case. They described a woman who had become cautious and withdrawn in recent weeks, hinting that she suspected something was wrong at home. One colleague recalled Emily mentioning a hidden stash of money she planned to use if she ever needed to leave suddenly. These accounts painted a picture of a marriage fraying beneath the polished surface, contradicting the image of domestic harmony Daniel projected to the public. As the evidence mounted, the tone of the investigation shifted. Detectives who once offered comforting words began to ask sharper questions. Daniel noticed the change in their posture, the subtle but unmistakable shift from sympathy to suspicion. Every follow-up interview became more pointed, each request for details more precise. What he had believed to be a flawless plan was unraveling piece by piece, leaving behind a trail of clues that no amount of tears could hide. Weeks passed as the investigation tightened around Daniel like an invisible net. What began as a sympathetic inquiry into a tragic burglary transformed into a relentless pursuit of truth. Detectives pieced together the evidence with quiet determination, each discovery bringing them closer to the man they once trusted as one of their own. The more Daniel tried to maintain his role as the grieving husband, the more obvious his cracks became. His once steady demeanor gave way to nervous habits, stamping his foot during interviews, avoiding eye contact, and offering explanations that shifted slightly with each retelling. What had seemed like genuine grief now looked more like the strain of keeping a deadly secret. The forensic analysis proved devastating. Experts determined that the glass from the broken window had fallen outward, contradicting Daniel's claim that an intruder had forced their way inside. Microscopic examination of fibers on the gloves found in his patrol car matched fibers from Emily's bedding. Investigators also discovered faint traces of cleaning chemicals in areas where blood residue should have been, a clear sign of tampering. Phone records revealed that during the time he claimed to be shopping, his cell phone remained near the house, pinging off the same neighborhood tower again and again. Each piece of evidence, small on its own, formed a chain of proof that was nearly impossible to deny. Meanwhile, financial documents exposed Daniel's hidden motive. Bank statements revealed thousands of dollars in gambling losses and overdue payments to private lenders known for aggressive collection tactics. Investigators uncovered emails where he inquired about life insurance payout timelines, inquiries made just weeks before Emily's death. Friends who initially defended his character grew uneasy as these details emerged, their loyalty shaken by the mountain of facts pointing toward premeditation. Even his colleagues on the force, once protective of their own, began to distance themselves as the case gained public attention. When detectives finally confronted Daniel with the full scope of their findings, the carefully built facade began to crumble. During a long interrogation session, he first denied everything, insisting he was being framed by an unknown intruder. Hours later, faced with irrefutable evidence, he shifted to a story of emotional despair, claiming the attack was a sudden loss of control rather than a calculated act. But investigators had already uncovered his purchases of gloves, tools, and cleaning supplies, along with detailed notes hidden in his car that outlined the timeline of the crime. Their questions were no longer about whether he was guilty, but about how carefully he had planned the murder. The trial drew widespread attention, filling the courtroom with reporters and locals who once admired the couple. Prosecutors presented a chilling narrative of greed, desperation, and betrayal, supported by forensic science and Daniel's own contradictory statements. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning a verdict of first-degree murder. Daniel Mercer, once celebrated as a protector of his community, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The town of Brookhaven was left shaken, struggling to reconcile the trusted officer they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer revealed in court. The case became a haunting reminder that evil can hide behind a badge, a smile, and the illusion of a perfect life, waiting for the moment to strike.